Good morning, students, and welcome back for our literature class. So from today onwards, I'm going to teach you literature here. So here we are going to start with the poetry section. So we are going to start with the first poem, that is Darkling Thrush. So the Darkling Thrush we are going to do. So before starting with the poem, let me introduce you to the poet. Now, who has written this poem? As you know, it is written by Thomas Hardy. So it's given on page number 5 of your text. You can just go through it. Here about Thomas Hardy we have. So Thomas Hardy was a famous poet. He was a poet of England. So about Thomas Hardy we are going to learn today. So who was Thomas Hardy? He was born in 1840. He died in 1928. He was called as a realist poet, Victorian realist poet, right? Realist he was. He was born in England. He was one of the most prolific English novelists and poets of the late 19th century. His novels such as Tess de Aberville's Mayor of Casterbridge and Jude the Obscure reflect the social and moral concerns of his age. So these are his poems. However, Hardy's lyric poetry is by far his best known and most widely read. His poetry explores a fatalistic outlook against the dark, rugged landscape of his native Dorset. Okay, so that is his determined outlook against the dark, against the rugged landscape of his native. He rejected the Victorian belief of a benevolent God. He rejected this as a poet, and much of his poetry reads as a sardonic lament. So what do you understand by sardonic lament? Means it's sarcastic. Okay, so it reads as a sarcastic sadness, grief, right? Most of his poems on the bleakness of the human conditions. Okay, bleakness, pale, without any color in it. That is about human condition, which never changes, which is determined. So this is what his poem is. This is how we get an idea of his poem. His style is highly original, combining a variety of meters and stanzaic forms. So this is what the style of his writing has been spoken over here. His style of writing is having a variety of meters in the poem and stanzaic forms it has. He often combines this with rough-hewn rhythms and colloquial diction. So rough-hewn rhythms, that means there was no neat finishing in his rhythms. Rhythms were not neatly finished. And colloquial diction, and he often used informal words in his poem. This is what is spoken about Thomas Hardy. This is what we know about Thomas Hardy's style of writing. He influenced a host of later poets such as Robert Frost, W.H. Auden, Dylan Thomas, and Philip Larkin. Okay, this particular poet, that is Thomas Hardy, his poetry was acclaimed. His poetry was acclaimed in the sense it was praised before his poems were introduced, isn't it? And it was very much before he became a poet. His poems were very much praised by the younger poets, Georgian younger poets. Okay, they viewed him as a mentor. He was termed by these Georgian younger poets as a mentor. Younger poets like Ezra Pound, you have some of the names here, W.H. Auden, Dylan Thomas, or Philip Larkin, all these people. These younger poets termed him as a mentor. Mentor in the sense, they termed him as a wise and a trusted teacher, a trusted counselor, you can say. So from all these things, you can understand how well he wrote. He was influenced, his poetry was influenced by these poets, these younger poets like Robert Frost, W.H. Auden. Only after his death, only after Thomas Hardy's death, his poems were published after his death. And when it was published that time also, he was praised a lot. He was lauded by these great poets like Ezra Pound, Auden, Dylan Thomas, Philip Larkin, and so on. So today what we are going to begin over here is Thomas Hardy's poem called as the Darkling Thrush. Now from what do you understand by darkling? Darkling means dark, right? Dark side, darker part. This is what you can understand from it. And thrush, it's a small bird, a small little bird which sings. So that is the poem about the bird, the darkling side, isn't it? All these things. As we go through the poem, you will understand what it is. So it's a nature poem with the theme of hope. So there was some hope in it. What hope? We will come to know as we are doing the poem. The poem begins with a bleak picture of despair. So a pale picture of despair the poem begins with. This is what you can see in the very beginning of the poem. And dejection, as the poet describes in lyrical descriptive detail, the dying of the old world at the turn of the century. So you know that everything, isn't it? So there is life after death, again death after life, isn't it? So that's the process. So this is what you can see over here in this poem also. The dying of the old world at the turn of the century. Century is getting over and a new century is coming along, right? He finds little cause for hope or joy around him. Suddenly he hears the song. So there wasn't any hope, little hope he could find. And all of a sudden he happens to hear the bird sing, the thrush bird, right? That is the songbird, which spreads warmth and hope into the earlier desolate and dead landscape. So this is what he hears. The poet finds his spirits rising, and with it the realization that there is still hope and joy in the world. So with the bird singing, the poet is rising, is finding his spirits rising, right? And this realization, he just feels that there is still hope and joy in the world. So this is how the poem comes to an end. So let me read the poem to you, The Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey and winter's drags made desolate the weakening eye of day. And tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. The land's sharp features seemed to be the century's corpse outlined, his crypt the cloudy canopy, the wind its death lament. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead, in a full-hearted even song of joy illimited. An aged thrush, frail, gowned and small, in blast beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. So little cause for carolings of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things, afar or nigh around, that I could think they trembled through his happy good night air, some blessed hope whereof he knew and I was unaware. So this is the poem. Let me start with the first stanza of the poem. The first stanza is said like this: I leant upon a coppice gate. So here the poem is in the first person narration, right? So you can see, I leant upon a coppice gate. I lent means leaning, taking the support of a coppice gate. The poet is saying that he was leaning, or he was taking the support of the coppice gate. Coppice gate in the sense wooden gate, a gate made of wood, okay, or a piece of wood the gate is made of, fine. So he was taking the support of the wooden gate, he says. When frost was spectre grey, and it says the time, so the situation is shown over here. The climatic situation, the weather is shown over here. When frost was spectre grey, so he says frost. Now what is this frost? I hope all of you might have experienced dew, which is common for us over here, dew. It is the wettest part, isn't it? That is the wetness what you see outside, especially during the winter season. You may not see the same. Rainy season also you might be seeing the same thing. This wetness, when there is no rain especially, you can identify, otherwise it is because of the rainwater you can see. The dew which forms, the water drops which forms, which get accumulated on grass, on top of the grass, on plants, isn't it? On your lawn, this is what you might have experienced. So the same dew, the formation of the dew in the form of scrambled ice is called as frost. Okay, so scrambled ice from the ice cubes, when you scramble it, when you scrape the ice cubes, isn't it? You get that nice flakes of it, right? So this scrambled ice form of the dew, frozen part of the dew is called as frost. This we don't experience over here in Kerala, and you might have never seen it. Only if you have gone into any of the northern parts, especially in Shimla, Darjeeling, those areas, if you have visited those areas, or Kullu Manali, you might have experienced it, right? So this you can see in these areas only. So when frost was spectre grey, so frost, he says, what was frost at that time? So at this particular time of the season, the poet is saying frost was spectre grey. The color of frost was grey, he says. Okay, grey, no color. Okay, it was grey. In the sense, it was dull. He says spectre grey, dull like what he said? Dull like ghost, he says. Okay, so dull the frost was that it was like ghost. So that is the comparison given over spectre grey, fine. And winter's drags made desolate. So how the winter was? The winter, that is the winter's drags, means the last part of winter. So winter was getting concluded over there, was getting over that part, right? So winter's drags made desolate. So it was cheerless. It was totally cheerless. The last part of winter was cheerless. This is what, and you know it is winter because you had seen frost over here. Frost you can experience only in winter, as I have told you earlier, right? This is what he says, right? The weakening eye of day. So the weakening eye of the day. What is the poet explaining over here? The weakening eye of the day. That is the sun what is speaking about over here, right? The weakening eye of the day. The sun he is speaking. The eye is being termed, or the poet is meaning whatever he is speaking over here is with reference to the sun, right? Weakening eye of day. That is the sun. What is it? The tangled bind stems coat the sky. The tangled in the sense interwoven bind stems of the climbers. You know, climbers, they climb, isn't it? They just climb everywhere. They just keep on, grapevine. It's a climber, right? So like that, it was climbing. It was interwoven, scored the sky, lining up the sky. This is what he says. Like strings of broken lyres, and how it was like the strings of the broken lyres. Now, broken lyres means it is the string musical instrument. You can just go through the picture of it. These pictures are put along with this video. The picture of thrush, as the bird thrush, as well as the lyres, right? And all mankind that haunted nigh. So all mankind that haunted nigh. All mankind. So the poet is describing being a human being himself. He is keeping himself away from it and is speaking over here. That is what you can understand. And all mankind that haunted nigh, that visited mankind, the entire human race. That is what he's terming. That haunted nigh, that visited this place, had sought their household fires. Okay, why they sought the household? Because of the cold winter. Has sought, so they all, those who visited, those who came out, they all went back or they returned to the warmer part, okay, to warm themselves besides the household fire, to sit beside the fire. This is what he says over here. I hope explanation of each line is clear to you. Now from this poem, what we understand, from this first stanza itself, what we understand is that the poet is speaking about winter, which is concluding, as I have told you in the earlier scene itself, isn't it? The poet is describing about a winter cold day which is fast dying. This is what you are saying. That is what entirely you say. So there is no support. That is what you can see. The poet is all alone out. That is another fact what you can observe in this particular stanza. He is all alone. He is just taking the support to stand. He is taking the support of the wooden gate. This is what you can see here. And he says frost was spectre grey. He speaks over here about the frost. He is comparing the frost. He says frost was spectre grey. He is comparing the frost over here he says the frost is grey. You know, when it is winter time, it becomes dark, isn't it? The sun is not even bright. That is also spoken over here. He speaks about the sun. He speaks somewhere over here, the winters. He says the weakening eye of day. Weakening eye. Eye is referring to the sun. So what does he say over here? Weakening eye. The sun is becoming weak. That means it is becoming dark. So normally winter day is never bright. It is dark. So the last part of the winter is describing. The tangled vine stems cover the sky. Even the climber stems, they are also looking dull over here, isn't it? Which is lining up the sky, isn't it? They are looking dull. They are looking like what? They are looking like the stringed musical instrument he is terming. That is what he says. Lies. He says lies. And he says that all mankind that haunted night, those who all came outside to see this, they went back inside. So some indoor activities are going on. No outdoor activities. This is what he is referring. Excepting he was all alone. He was lonely outside in this dark part, isn't it? So that was the worst end of winter. This is what he is trying to explain over here. Now let us see the poetic devices in this particular poem. In this particular stanza itself, you have the simile, you have the metaphors, you have personification, you have imagery, all you have in this particular stanza itself. So let us see one by one in this stanza. So you can see over here the second line of the first stanza. Frost was spectre grey. Frost was spectre grey, right? So this is a metaphor given over here. It's a metaphor. Frost was spectre grey. Frost is being compared over here as grey, dull, like a ghost. It is being said, okay? So it's not only a metaphor, we can say, it is even a personification, okay? It is personified. Frost is personified with ghost, right? So again you can see one more personification in this. That personification is, you can see the sun, the weakening eye of day. The sun is personified over here. Eye you have for human being, isn't it? So human quality is being given to things. So that is what you can see, eye of day. So there you can see personification. Then I leant upon a coppice gate. So this, and you can see the tangled vine stems covered the sky. These two are imageries. These are visual imageries. So you get the picture of these in your mind, isn't it? You can picturize these things. The poet leaning upon a coppice gate, or the tangled vine stems scored the sky, isn't it? Interwoven stems of the climber. You can just picturize them, right? Then the tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lies. So this is a simile over here, right? This is a simile. The tangled vine stems coat the sky like strings of broken lies. So it's a simile. So that is another poetic device. So you have metaphor over here, you have simile over here, isn't it? And you can see in this part, and winter's drags me desolate, isn't it? So that is the last part of winter is made so cheerless, hopeless. This is what he's saying over here, isn't it? That is again another metaphor used. When frost was spectre grey and winter's drags me desolate. So these two are metaphors used. Tangled vine stems coat the sky like strings of broken leads is the simile used over here in this particular stanza. And you have the frost was spectre grey. So it is spectre grey, means frost is like a ghost, dull, grey, like a ghost. So that is again a personification. It's a metaphor, it's a personification, isn't it? And then you have visual imageries over here. That is, I leant upon a coppice gate, the tangled vine stems coat the sky. Then the same tangled vine stems coat the sky like strings of broken lace. That is the simile. So these are the poetic devices used. So you can see almost all the devices in the first stanza itself. So this is the way how he has termed this word. So let us see the next stanza in our next class. So we'll finish off with the remaining stanzas in our next class. Till then, thank you very much.